Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and I can't absolutely wait long and any more time than just to get into this because it's from Politics Joe, and it's literally just listening to Ian Hislop bodying Tory MPs. And it's always a great reminder, ladies and gentlemen, is that I know journalists get a horrendous reputation for the belief that they spread lies and that people don't actually believe in the things that they say, because some people always argue there's always some political agenda just for telling people what's been going on, which is, there are plenty of cases where this is and isn't true, but there are also plenty of cases of those who just write things from the perspective of trying to tell people clearly in a non-derogatory or condescending way about what goes on. The difference is if you literally read anything from The Guardian and The Sun, if you kind of compare the two as far as like articles and the way they present journalism, the contrast is night and day. Not that I'm not saying that The Guardian is, perfect or anything like that, but I trust that far more than I would trust The Sun or anything that Rupert Murdoch would produce. And what we've got coming up, ladies and gentlemen, is, remember, Ian Hislop runs the Private Eye, and it's one of the most sought after and one of the most successful publications in the UK right now, because it doesn't fall under the trap that so many others fall under. Because the Private Eye isn't really a newspaper, it's a weekly, but just like the New Statesman. And just like the New Statesman, I'd much rather take that, The Guardian, and the Private Eye well over anything else that gets put out these days, because, well, for reasons you're about to see, ladies and gentlemen, Ian Hislop doesn't put a foot wrong. He knows exactly when to strike, and if you're going to try and argue with Ian Hislop that he's wrong, bad news, you're picking a fight with the wrong person. Don't try and quiz Ian Hislop on fake. He will know immediately, and if you try and say he's wrong, you're not going to stand a chance. And listen, I haven't watched Have I Got News For You in such a long time, but it's a testament to how popular Ian Hislop is for the show, as well as Paul Merton, because Paul Merton is a very left-leaning man as well. But I also like to imagine Ian Hislop doesn't have too many prejudices or biases either, because he does the best sort of thing that any journalist could possibly do. He doesn't really take sides in these sorts of things. He just reports the facts and he quizzes people on what's been going on, which is just how it's meant to be done. So here we go.
One thing we do control is their massive taxpayer-funded pensions. We do have control of that, and we can pass an emergency piece of legislation, a parliamentary pardon. Why can't we do the same thing with their pensions?
Well, why couldn't you do it so long ago? The fact that it takes an ITV drama and suddenly, having been told their entire campaigning lives, this is very difficult, you'll have to go in front of a judge, this is very, very expensive, oh, this morning it isn't, tomorrow we'll pass legislation and you're all exonerated. I mean, it is absolutely fatuous for this government to claim, hey, we're really acting now. Did nothing.
Yeah, and you know what? Previously, when I did a video about just how bad the Tories have completely derailed the NHS, it's worth mentioning that, just think about it. If they were that concerned about passing this, they would have done this a very long time ago. If they were actually determined to fund millions and millions of pounds into the NHS, they wouldn't need, a referendum campaign to say this is one of the strong suits. They would have just done that because it would have made them look popular no matter what time of day it would have been. It makes sense, but they don't actually do it. So they're saying one thing, but doing the opposite.
Sorry.
No, you're not sorry.
That is demonstrably, that is demonstrably complete and utter.
Why did you give her a CBE in 2019?
Why did you want a CBE?
Why did you appoint her to the Cabinet Office? You talk over everyone else, and you've been doing it in the entire programme.
Well, I mean, 2 points. One is, because I'm from Private Eye, I can't resist saying that Vince may be proud of that, but we've still got one of the largest arms industries in the world, and we're very happy to export lots of death-dealing machinery to...
Yeah, you know what, I think I remember back in 2002, Vince Cable was voted the quiet man or something like that in Parliament when he was Was Vince Cable the chair of the the vice leader of the Conservative parties in 2002? But yeah, he's not saying a lot right now, and I find that very interesting. Once again, you can gauge a lot about what people just what they don't say, and well, I don't really think that's in Hislop's corner. He hasn't really got anything to hide, or he hasn't got anything like ambiguous to say behind what the dealings that have been going on, because he knows what's been going on because it's been reported, and it's what the British public are entitled to know, because we pay the taxes so we can fund these machinations of war. It's absolutely within the public's right.
To anybody, and Vince may be proud of that, but we've still got one of the largest arms industries in the world, and we're very happy to export lots of death dealing machinery to anybody who wants to buy it. That's cheap point number one. Slightly more expensive point is for 50 years Private Eye has pretty much in most issues exposed a miscarriage of justice, and a lot of them have been murders. Over the years, large numbers of these cases have been found to be entirely wrong, and the men convicted, almost all of the men, there's a couple of women, have been found innocent. So we would have killed those people, and in some of those very high-profile cases, which involve terrorism cases, we would have made very dangerous new martyrs by executing people who turned out not to have committed the murders involved. So on a purely practical basis, whatever you think it says about the civilised nature of your society or not, I think it would be incredibly dangerous to have capital punishment back.
Mr. Patel, are you influenced at all by that argument of miscarriages of justice?
No disrespect, Ian, but I'm not. On the basis that I think, this is really about our criminal justice system, actually. And I think if any, for any conviction, for example, you need ultimate burden of proof. You really do, and that means that...
But that's his point, that they find these mistakes all the time.
Well, I mean, that's...
Are you saying they were guilty, all these people?
No, I'm not saying they were.
That's also the thing as well, that Priti Patel literally did not do her homework whatsoever. You're trying to argue that you're trying to justify that innocent people ought to be murdered because they were innocent. And well, forget about what goes on in the Middle East or in Yemen, for example. But what about at home? Are you trying to suggest that innocent people were completely justified to be murdered because, I don't know, wrong place, wrong time? Are you trying to suggest that that's what it takes? Are you trying to suggest that bringing back capital punishment is going to force people in line because the object of fear through physical violence is somehow a practice that is ever proven to have worked? And again, a lot of people make these very cynical comments about wokeism and how the younger generation have come in with extraordinary ideas and how they act as though they've never actually been they've never been through hard times and they never had to go through discipline and stuff like that. First of all, it doesn't necessarily have to be the case, because if you get people who actually understand and they respect the rules and they want to just get on with it and not actually cause trouble, it's not within a person's nature to cause trouble. Sometimes a person may want to question why we have these things in place, why we even had things like capital punishment in the first place, and to understand these things, to go a little bit further, is that actually for the way we look at it in the future. I mean, the way I was brought up, I just stuck to the rules. I wanted to know more. I wanted to go my own way. I just simply wanted to. There was no cause whatsoever for it to be beaten into me. You're not going to make people behave just by beating the message into them. That's not how that works. You think somebody is going to respect the rules for the fear of being, disciplined with violence? It works in some cases, ladies and gentlemen, but the after effects in plenty of other cases could literally be disastrous. And I feel like even in the world we live in right now, ladies and gentlemen, I think the last thing that's actually on anybody's agenda is for there to be even more violence in this world. Because that's ultimately how I see capital punishment in my mind. It's just violence. Whether or not you say it's justified is... Well, I think the sort of thing that Ian Hislop is trying to quiz Priti Patel on is that, is violence the answer? Well, no, it isn't. violence is the last bastion of moral cowardice, even to those who, again, is it an eye for an eye? Is that what Priti Patel was trying to justify?
Guilty. Obviously, I'm not.
So
not
they
with
would
those
be dead?
cases. No, the point. Well, the point is, as I said earlier on, this is about having deterrence. If you have strong deterrence of that
It's not a
nature
deterrent
as well.
killing the wrong people.
Well, no, capital punishment would act as a deterrent.
Sorry, one second.
That people don't come across the channel illegally.
It's amazing you can still say Rwanda with a straight face. I mean, that's an extraordinary achievement.
Why do you say that, Ian?
But deporting people to the scene of a former Holocaust still strikes me as a bit tin-eared.
Ian...
You look at the companies who are spending the most money, and they're not the good guys. The people who really are shelling out money to MPs come from very specific lobbies. We're in a very old building. It was the sugar lobby a long time ago, and then it was the tobacco lobby, and the gambling lobby is pretty strong now, and there are plenty of others, and the lobbies from the financial world. Again, I don't think any of this is hugely complex. It is pretty much who you think it will be, and they're doing what you think they're doing.
But you referred to an entry in my register, and I'm going to seek your advice. Because this was the situation I was faced. I never accept hospitality, and I didn't. What I faced was, the night before the event, a member of my staff phoning me up, who had been working extraordinarily hard over the COVID period, saying to me, Alberto, I'm a football fan, you've received an email and it's inviting you to this event. I'm not a football fan. Alberto, can I go? What should my response have been to that hard-working member of staff, in your opinion?
I would say you would refer him to the Prime Minister's excuse that all his staff are incredibly hard-working and therefore deserve a drink at the end of the day. There's lots of people are hard-working. You might have thought, this free ticket should go to the nurse in the ICU ICU department. I'm being frivolous, but I'm just saying it's not a very good excuse.
Okay, well, it's not an excuse, it's the fact.
No, it is. It's just an excuse. I know what immediately... Again, this borderline goes on the line with what I said before about how Jeremy Hunt thinks that £100,000 is not particularly a very high salary for him anymore. It comes across the idea that, well, for doing virtually no... Because let's face it, the entire COVID-19 pandemic, the actual people who have been, flogged with work have been those in the NHS, those who have been heavily relied on for deliveries because people weren't leaving their houses, and even those in the public sector as well. They had to work from home, and they had to somehow fit around the idea of trying to keep their families together and trying to hope for the best that some of their relatives, elderly, as well as their friends and family, were not being targeted from COVID, in which case, if things went from bad to worse, they wouldn't even be allowed to see them or say their final goodbyes. It should be worth mentioning, ladies and gentlemen, is that I lost two great relatives during the pandemic, and I wasn't allowed to say my goodbyes or go to their funerals. And it doesn't strike... anything that happened as a result of Partygate, it doesn't strike me as a lot of Conservatives necessarily understand how bad it makes them look when they do stuff like this. Because what relation or what exactly do the majority of Conservative MPs actually know about the British public? Especially when they put things like this in place and think that they are above the law to do exactly as they want. I enjoy a drink sometimes when I've had a very difficult day at work, ladies and gentlemen, but that doesn't mean to say that the person who has also been doing the same amount of hours or the same shift doesn't deserve it just as much.
But you're using the fact as an excuse, and I'm saying I don't think it's totally... I can see the reaction in a couple of the rows there, sort of whinging metropolitan losers, can't bear it. After an election or a referendum, even if you lose the vote, you are entitled to go on making the argument. When a government...
Again, this is this almost could have been straight after the Brexit referendum, because I know a lot of people were complaining that Ramonas, as they were, they thought that they weren't getting it off, and that's how it is. And well, he's absolutely right. you're more than free. You know, the result may be what it is. I didn't agree with it, but I still maintain that, you know what, I still fundamentally believe we would have been better off in the European Union than out of it. Because it was all about deregulating huge regulations regarding those living in very high positions for economic reasons for those living in the city of London, and they could make huge bonuses with incredibly high risks, and if it all went to pot, then the British taxpayer would just be able to bail them out, which in a modern and civilized society, ladies and gentlemen, is the very last thing we should be doing. Why on earth should ordinary working people bail out those who can actually support themselves? Why exactly do we need to pay for Rishi Sunak's non-dom status when somebody who must be making nearly £1 million over the span of roughly 3 years from a multi-millionaire family, why do we need to pay to fight his battles?
When a government in this country wins an election, the opposition does not just say, oh, that's absolutely right, I've got nothing to say for 5 years.
My case again, ladies and gentlemen, and well, what do you expect? It's called the opposition for a reason. It means to be opposed to something. I mean, I know that deep down inside, some people who are stupid enough to actually take the government, to take the Conservatives as gospel, and there are some people again it could be the other way round, but it's again, in this day and age, the Conservatives would love to see nothing more than if the UK became a one-party dictatorship and a police state. They would love absolutely nothing more for that to take place. Why? Because they could go on for the rest of time and be completely unopposed to any opposition. Then they can change the laws again about what counts as a radical organization, who can and cannot protest. Freedom of movement will be restricted to freedom of speech and the freedom to criticize MPs. MPs, mostly for the Conservative Party, would be escorted by escorts of roughly 600 police officers to every attendance. They would probably have marksmen flanked on rooftops to make sure that if anything did go haywire, they could take anybody out that they disagreed with. Very soon, this could end up almost like how Russia would do it, because you may remember Russia 2 weeks ago held their general elections without much fanfare going off on the rest of the world, because they literally had Russian soldiers. They might have been the KGB, they might have been the Okhrana, but they were literally going into voters' booths to look over people's shoulders, asking, who are you voting for? And are you sure you're voting for the right candidate? That's the sort of thing that resulted in Putin getting nearly a 75% advantage over the 3 other rivals. Possibly Putin would have liked nothing more for there to be of no rivals whatsoever, even if Navalny's wife had decided that she wanted to run as president. Or prime minister, I should say. Or prime minister. I'm pretty sure it's Russian. I'm pretty sure it is president. My apologies.
So, those of us who...
Actually, while we're on the subject as well, is that how bad do you think it would be, ladies and gentlemen, for it to be almost as bad as Russia? Because the Russian people for hundreds of years have always been denied the truth, and they will accept whatever truth is ever been accepted to them by the workings on of what goes inside the Kremlin. Bear in mind, the recent terrorist attacks that happened in Moscow, the Kremlin has literally released that Britain, the US, and Ukraine were all behind it. And, well, even though obviously the Russians, you and I, the Americans and the Ukrainians absolutely know this wasn't the case, who exactly is going to oppose what goes on in Russia right now? Who's going to oppose what's going on in the Kremlin? Nobody. Because who has the power to?
We're trying fairly hard in the last weeks to follow what on earth is happening in this country. The Leave vote has left us with a group of leaders who, having lit the fire, have all run away, saying someone else can clear up the mess.
Yeah, well, that's something I said literally for the moment, because remember how vocal Boris Johnson was during the referendum campaign, and then all of a sudden Theresa May is now the new Prime Minister? And now, even now, she's not even stepping in for the election, and plenty of others have decided to hot-foot it as well, because they know they're screwed, because they screwed the country, and too many people are becoming openly aware of this. And I hope more videos like these, and the videos like Maximilian Robespierre, Owen Jones, and all other channels like this, the word gets out even more, because, well, this isn't funny. It's tantamount to the fact that what exactly do we have? What more proof do we need that it's not working?
The Prime Minister who put us in the mess has resigned. Everybody is gone. All the people that put their cross down for leave saying, this is what we want, they seem to be getting a group of people who say, we can't stop immigration, we can't give 350 million,
Well, again, and this is absolutely true, but it should also be worth noting that even as far back as Margaret Thatcher, Europe was such a gigantic thorn in Thatcher's side. It was the thorn in the side for Cameron, for Theresa May, for Johnson, for Truss. Although Truss's tenure was so immaculately short, it was a multitude of other issues aside from Europe, although Europe was just as much of an issue as well. But also Rishi Sunak. There's something of like an increasing pattern as well, and even John Major. You could throw that into the bargain as well. So, what do you expect? People who absolutely have no idea how to handle a situation that they caused decide to hot-foot it and put instead people who absolutely equally don't know what they're going to do, and they have no real ways of actually working around this issue. Talk about embarrassing.
By the way, there might be quite a lot of austerity. Sorry, bye. The government puts asylum seekers in places which are already deprived, quite often because it's easier and cheaper. It outsources them to companies who run them very badly for profit. There's no warning a lot of the time. The hotels just spring up. The reason people are in hotels and hostels for so long is because the backlog is so enormous, and people are there for, months and years. You say you'd like them not to be. Well, they are. That is why they're there. And to blame the people in the hotels and the hostels for being there when the system has completely failed seems to be encouraging people to go round there with hammers and smash up police cars and say, it's your fault you're here. He seems to be encouraging the sort of reaction that social media and the various sort of lunatics who follow that stuff take as read. And I think all of those factors mean you've just got to do better.
I sound like a right bastard, don't I, doing this whole sort of veterans employment thing?
No, it's not the veterans bit. It's the £85,000 for a 4-hour job.
I know. I know what you're thinking, because I'm
thinking, why don't you do it for free?
I know, because you get 20 grand for 2 hours tonight, don't you?
Yeah, but the people who've lost money out of this company are very cross with you. It's about your behaviour and the fact that you didn't know. And didn't ask as a non-executive director, where does the money come from for this
company? Ask where it came from, and it came from the business that's generated by the business that we do.
They were providing the money that kept your company going.
No,
you were a non-exec.
No, they didn't. That's why the BBC are being sued for libel, because no money went from that company into Crucial Academy.
But it did, though.
It did, though. Oh, God, yes, absolutely. Now, let me tell you something right now. That is just like... That's the perfect way. People will try and argue saying that, but you're the ones who did it. It's the equivalent of saying, you know what, we didn't steal that cake from the kitchen, but you did though. We saw you do it. There's no, again, this is the problem that I can't stress enough just why Ian Hislop is the sort of person that really would make a much he doesn't make a better politician just because he proves to be right because of things like, you know what, through evidence and the fact that the behaviors of what's been going on for the last 14 years would suggest that nobody has any clue what they're doing, and they'll just decide what is going to be happening. But then, of course, there's the added question of the fact that, well, it's because Ian Hislop is far too intelligent. He knows fine well exactly that there are huge issues and litigations about if some of the things he was going to introduce, and take it away from things like a PR standpoint about how well he can make a political organization look. There's the fact that, well, again, he could say and do and, you know, ask and, you know, do all the right things, but being an editor-in-chief and a journalist and broadcasting is nowhere near the same as actually sitting in Parliament and having to wrangle it out with MPs from the opposition and trying to work on policies to make this country a better place. It's so much. It's the difference could be almost as night and day, and that's why, again, it's you. Some people know where their lane is and they should stay in it. Some people, they think they're so above their lane, they cut people out of it and try and race ahead. To what, I have no idea. But with all that being said and done, I hope all of you guys have enjoyed this reaction video to Ian Hislop rinsing Tory MPs, and I cannot wait to see all of you guys again for more rinsing next time. Take care, and bye-bye for now.